Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I am Tony and this is Predicted. So firstly, a massive apology to a couple of people, Barry, who actually filmed his thoughts on the fragrances we're going to be talking about today quite some time ago, months in fact. And a big apologies to Vitor from Rosa Salas, who kindly sent us some new fragrances at the time. They're not so new anymore, but I would like to give you my thoughts on them. This is a collaboration with Scentualise, so Barry has decided to join with me on this and give you our thoughts on the fragrances.
Go on to the first one, and that is 109 Sur la Lune. Now this is inspired by Ombre Nuit, which is by Christian Dior, and it's in their private line. I have never smelt the original. I've heard good stories about the original, but I've never tried it. And as soon as I smelled this, I fell in love with it. It's like rosy, spicy, amber, but it's really lifted by some nice citruses, especially in the opening. It's quite airy and it's a little bit peppery as well. And the spices, they just keep coming off you all day long. This is above average longevity, I would say, so you're probably talking 7 to 8 hours. Projection 1 to 2 hours. It's a unisex fragrance. I think it is aimed more towards the women, but I would definitely wear this, and I think it's right down the middle. And when would I wear it? I would say it's an autumn, winter, maybe early spring type fragrance, and it's definitely for the colder days. So that's the first fragrance, 109 Sur la Lune.
Thank you, Barry, for your thoughts on Sur la Lune, which is Rosa Salas' interpretation of Ombre Nuit. Quickly, because I don't think we've covered the notes in this. In the top, this has grapefruit, bergamot and lime. In the mid, we have roses and spices. And in the base, we have amber. I think I've smelt the original in store only. It has quite a cult status within the fragrance community, but I can't give you an expert direct comparison. And to be honest, a lot of the Rosa Salas fragrances, they have a slightly different spin on them anyway, which make them their own scent. They're just inspired by, after all. This does start with a quite sharp, citrusy opening, but I wouldn't call it a citrus fragrance at all. It doesn't strike me as being sort of summery or uplifting, but there is a slight sharpness there. It then sort of transitions very quickly into a peppery, subtle rose, and that rose note to me is almost the focus, certainly throughout sort of the beginning and the mid of the wearing. It gives it a powdery softness that it has. The rose isn't overly floral. I wouldn't call it an overly floral fragrance at all. And it has a very subtle, really lovely sweetness to it as well, without ever becoming sort of overcloying. I would say it reminds me slightly of Fève Delicious. I would blind guess that this would have tonka in it. It has that sort of almost, it's difficult to explain, but almost like a nuttiness in there in the background, a sweetness. The spices are there throughout, and mainly to me, it's a sort of slightly sort of peppery note. I really like it. It stays throughout the wearing. It's there in the opening, in the mid, and then in the base. It's actually really smooth. It's really classy, and it's really enjoyable to wear. I am very intrigued to get my nose on the original after smelling this one. I agree with Barry on his thoughts on this because it is 100% unisex in my eyes. The amber in it, I think, is adding that sort of slightly resinous sweetness there, but I wouldn't say it's the focus of the whole fragrance. That subtle, powdery, peppery rose, I think, is the main focus, which settles down into a slightly tonka-ish, ambery base. So that is my thoughts on Sur la Lune, which is number 109 if you're going to go and search it on their website.
So on to the next one, and this one is number 300, and it's called Roscoe. As you can see, it's a bit of a lighter juice to the other one, and this is based on Byredo's Gypsy Water. Now that's another one that I've never smelled, so I do apologise. I can't tell you if it smells like it in any way. I just do not know. All I can tell you is what I think of this fragrance, and I get a bit of a gin feel from this one, but it's also quite soapy at the same time. It's a bit metallic at times, but it's also got like a lovely citrus opening, but it goes into like a vanilla feel as it goes on. There's a couple of things that it reminds me of, and there's a few things that I don't like about it. I like the bright opening, but it tends to turn into like a stale sort of water smell, which I know that's not very complimentary, but that's just what I'm getting from it. I would say projection, not a great projector. I would say an hour at most. Longevity, probably 5 to 6 hours. For me, it wasn't the greatest of performers. And if anything, I would say it's more of a spring, summer fragrance. But I can see people wearing it because of the vanilla that comes in later on in a few colder days as well. But it was a no from me, I'm afraid. But I could still tell it's quality ingredients in there. And it's one that I would say also leans rather feminine. So that was number 300, Roscoe.
Thanks, Barry. Let's give you my thoughts on it. Firstly, the notes, we haven't given those yet, so let's tell you what it's got in it. So this has got bergamot, juniper berries, lemon and ginger. In the mid, it has orris, incense, pine wood and pink pepper. And in the base, it has amber, sandalwood and vanilla. What are my thoughts on Roscoe? I've smelled a few interpretations of this and I've never been that excited by the scent. I found it to be quite sort of a watery, effervescent, light wearing fragrance, which reminds me quite a bit of what Byredo really stands for, but it's never been anything that I've been overly excited to own. So I was interested in Rosa Salas' fragrance to see if that would change my mind. I will say that this is really easygoing, it's quite likeable, it's a light and airy scent. I find it slightly aromatic. In the opening there's some lemon with some citrus and juniper berries. You get this slight peppery smell, but that isn't overpowering. It's less peppery than the last one we discussed. But the main note that stands out to me is the sandalwood. It has a really lovely subtle sweetness, and that is coming from the vanilla. That comes in later through the wearing, and there's a slight sort of powdery softness coming from the orris. One thing I do like about it is none of the notes really jump out and say, look at me, I'm in charge here. They all seem to be quite subtly done, and they're all sort of in the background of each other. There's no note that, apart from the sandalwood really, that jumps out and says, look, I'm a heavy iris fragrance, or nothing's really overly dominant. And although I pick out sandalwood, it is what I mainly smell from it, it doesn't really, again, overpower the other notes. It just sits on that base quite nicely. I actually liked it more than I thought I would, to be fair. When I wore it, I got a really good sort of 6 to 7 hours wearing. I thought it would be something that would spray on and I wouldn't really notice it too much. But actually I did notice it. When you sort of spray it on your wrists and your hands and stuff and you move about, I actually got good wafts of it for most of the day. And the sandalwood was the main note that stayed throughout, with that slight vanillic sweetness in the background. Where I think this would wear well actually is on a lazy Sunday in the house, lazing around in your freshly laundered white bed linen. It's that sort of relaxing, easygoing fragrance. So actually very impressed by this. I liked it better than I thought I would. I wasn't overly excited by this style of fragrance to start with, but actually it surprised me.
So we'll move on to the next one, and this is Angelico, number 301. So this is based on Angel Share by Kilian. Now, I do own Angel Share, as you can see, and I absolutely love it. So this was going to be one of these where I was either going to say, yeah, it's lovely, or no, I don't like it. So let's start off with the way it feels. It starts off with rum and caramel and some woody goodness in there. A hint of spice, but not as much as the original. Plus a dialed up tonka. That's the one biggest thing that I would say comparing this to the original. I would say it's quite similar. Not as spicy and a lot more tonka. But I absolutely love it, and I do like tonka in fragrances, so if tonka is something that you really enjoy, then I'm pretty sure you'll enjoy this one. So, who would wear this? I'd definitely say it's unisex. I know many women that own Angel Share, and I know a lot of women that like the tonka note, so this might even be better for some women than the Angel Share original. For men, I love it. I know a lot of people that love it too, so definitely a unisex fragrance. Longevity, as good as the original, 7 to 8 hours, really good longevity. And projection, you get in 2 hours and it just bounces off the skin, especially for the first hour and a half. It's just absolutely bounding off your skin. And I would say this is definitely an autumn winter fragrance. So that is 301 Angelico.
So thanks, Barry. So we are on to Angelico. So Angelico is inspired by Angel Share. Angel Share I have a decant of, and I'll be honest, I thought it was something I would really like, with the rum and the caramel and the sort of sweet gourmand notes mixed with some woods and some amber and some tonka too. It's something that I thought I would really like it. But I got a decant of it, and actually I found it too sort of almost headache inducing. I found it too heavy, especially in the opening. It settled down quite nicely, but it was just something that was just a bit eye itching. And that's just me being honest with that one. It wasn't something I loved, so it wasn't something I was ever going to rush out to buy, although I really loved the sound of the notes. There are other sort of gourmand fragrances that do that. Black Phantom also does that to me as well, where I just can't get on with it. It's just too heavy and too much going on, and it's just something that would give me a headache. So not something I love. So again, something that I was interested to see if this did the same thing. And I'm actually quite pleased to say it doesn't. I know you think that I would say that, but it doesn't have that same heaviness there. Now, some people aren't going to like that because it's not as close to the original as some of these others are. Barry mentioned the tonka. This is really heavy in the tonka note, and it does remind me of other tonka heavy fragrances like Fève Delicious, which I mentioned earlier. This is much closer, I would say, to that than I would say to Angel Share. It has a much lighter nature to it, especially in the opening. I don't get any of the booze from this. I get mainly tonka, but there are some woods and some spices too. And it does have a really beautiful sweetness in there as well. So it doesn't make me feel sickly like the original, which is a good thing. And as you get to the dry down of both the original and this, they are much closer. And that's the bit I like about the original. So this almost goes straight to that dry down. So much more dialed back. It hasn't got as much spices or cinnamon in there. This lasts forever on the skin. It just kept going all day. The longevity is fantastic. So from that regard, great value for money. And very, very unisex in my opinion. This would suit either gender. It does smell good. Actually one of my favourite from the bunch of the fragrances that we're reviewing today. So that is Angelico.
So let's go on to number 302, and that's called Cloud 9. So this is based on Velvet Haze by Byredo. Now, another one that I haven't tried, but I really like this one. It's got like a green, musky, floral feel to it with like a herbal and citrus opening. So there's a nice patchouli that comes into it a bit later on, which gives it like a warm chocolatey feel. And it ends up a little creamy and a little bit milky, which is that's probably the only part that I don't like about it. But other than that, the first couple of hours, really enjoyed the fragrance. It's just that last bit where it goes a little bit milky, which I've tried milky fragrances before and they don't really suit me, but this has got like a chocolate milk to it, which I do like, so it's one of those where I'm not quite sure about it later on. So this one definitely leans more feminine. Longevity, not as good as the Angelico. This is more 5-6 hours lasting and projects for about an hour or so. So when would I wear it? Well, it starts off quite spring smelling, like with the greenness and the florals. But then as you get more into it, it turns more into an autumn winter sort of fragrance. So you could even say it's a signature fragrance. I wouldn't, however, wear it in the high heat. That's definitely a no-no. But yeah, really enjoyed this one, and that was number 302, Cloud 9.
So on to the fourth one. This is number 302 and it's called Cloud 9, which is inspired by Velvet Haze, as Barry mentioned. I will just tell you the notes quickly. I think they're quite important, especially what Barry was saying about it. It's got some coconut, it's got herbs, and it's got bergamot in the opening. It's got rose and osmanthus in the mid, and it's got some patchouli, some chocolate, musk, and incense in the base. So in the opening, I get this creamy citrus and some really lovely sweetness. Like Barry said, there's something quite summery or spring-like about it. The florals in this start to become more noticeable after a few minutes. They start to come up to the top of the fragrance. I know that sounds strange, but when you spray, you get this creamy citrus sweetness, and then all of a sudden, just give it a few minutes and the florals start to shine through, but then they start to fade back again. So it's almost like they're showing that they're there, but they're saying, you know what, I'm really shy and I don't want to talk to you. So they start to sort of fade away again. Then it goes quite earthy and very musky, but it does manage to maintain this nice sweetness throughout, and I think that's coming from the coconut. Now, I don't get the sort of lactonic chocolatey thing that Barry's getting from it. Now, you'd think that chocolate and the coconut would do that. You can see coconut milk chocolate would give him that feeling. So this is just proof that everybody's noses are different, because I really do not pick up on that. And that's not to say that Barry hasn't got it right or I've got it right. It's more that we're just picking up different things from it. I don't get a lactonic milky feel from it at all. But I do find it comforting and cozy. And I also get this slight sort of skin-like smell. It must be the sort of clever musk that's there, but you get this sort of slightly, not a stale skin smell, but this sort of freshly washed skin scent from it. It's like a skin-like scent. It's not dirty or sweaty, it is clean. And that sums the whole fragrance up, really. It is a very clean fragrance, very easy to wear. It's not my favourite here, I must admit, but I do like it. It's not something I'm going to rush to, but it's not, I can't see why people wouldn't like it. I think it would suit any gender, any time of year. Longevity is reasonable on it. There's nothing wrong with the fragrance, but there's nothing I'm getting excited about. So that is Cloud 9.
So let's move on to the last one that we were both sent, and this one is 303 and it's Pacino. Now, the name interested me straight away. I'm a massive fan of Al Pacino, love a lot of his films that he's been in. And this is based on Christian Dior's Rouge Trafalgar. So that is another one from the private line, and another one, unfortunately, that I've never smelled. But as soon as I saw the notes to this, I thought, I'm going to enjoy this. And I do. I absolutely love it. I really like fruity frags, and this is a fruity, musky frag. Really, really enjoyable. So the fruits, you're probably talking, I think it's berries, there's cherries in there, there's blackcurrant, there's grapefruit, there's orange. So you can tell straight away, you're just getting masses of it. I don't know if you ever played that Fruit Ninja. As I'm wearing it, I feel as if like I should have a sword chopping all these fruits as they're coming at me. So obviously with that many fruits in there, it's got a slight bit of tartness to it, which you would expect. But as it dries down, the patchouli comes in and it gets a little bit more earthy, but nothing over the top, and it gets a touch more green, so it goes fruity green as it goes further into it. Really, really enjoyable fragrance. So I would say this is a unisex fragrance. I think the original is classed as more for feminine. Now, I definitely like my fruity frags. I've got quite a few different ones which I absolutely love, and this is right up there. Really, really enjoy it. Longevity, not the greatest. I'd say about 5 to 6 hours. Projection, I'd say between an hour and 2 hours, anywhere between there. What you've got to remember with all these fragrances, we were sent them last week, so I've only really had 1 day wearing each of them. Other than that, I've not really tested them anymore, so some people might find differences in the performance to what I'm finding. They might find it better, they might find it worse. And when would I wear it? I'd say it's definitely a spring summer fragrance. So that is 303 Pacino.
So let's talk about the last one. Thanks, Barry, for your thoughts. I really like Barry's Fruit Ninja example. It is a fruity fragrance. I'll just go through the notes quickly. It's got raspberry, blackberry, cherry, orange, juniper and grapefruit. So all of the fruits. It's also got some woods, musks and patchouli in the background. It does open with a fruity cocktail. Now, fruit fragrances, especially when they're fruit sort of dominant, they scare me a little bit, I'll be honest. And the reason they do that is because I've smelled Pulp by Byredo, and I get this sort of overbearing, ripe fruit smell. It's not something I enjoy at all. So again, the sort of comparisons I'm reading up, this is inspired by Trafalgar, and reading up on what people's thoughts were, I was a little bit worried about that slight comparison because of the fruit to something like Pulp. So a little bit scared by this when I first got it through. But it isn't as sort of sickly or headache inducing as I imagined it to be at all. There's actually like a really fresh tartness to it in the opening, and then it does go a little bit sweeter as the fruits start to sort of fade back. It is actually quite an effervescent fragrance. It's quite sort of a watery fruit, so it does somehow remind me of sort of summer drinks. I don't know whether that's the juniper. It doesn't quite remind me of something like gin, but it reminds me of like maybe a gin cocktail with lots of fruits in there. That watery smell too. As it fades back, it does go a little musky, and like Barry said, it goes a little earthy, but nothing overpowering or overdone at all. It is, again, probably the lightest, easiest wear of these, I would say. And I thought this would be heavier and quite difficult to like, but it's not. It's actually, I quite like it. It's very easy to wear. It's an all-rounder. I think this would be enjoyed by anyone, to be honest, and you could wear it anywhere. It's quite a versatile fragrance, and I think any season, any event, this would actually go quite well. That is Pacino number 303. So thanks to Barry for collaborating with me on his thoughts on these Rosa Salas fragrances. Thanks to Vitor for sending these over for us to give him and our audiences our thoughts on this. The disclaimer is these were sent to us for free, but as always, we try and remain as impartial as we possibly can. I don't think it really affects Vitor if we don't like something, and we're quite open and honest about that, I would say, and I think we have been in this video. And sorry again for the delay in bringing you my snippets of these. Really enjoyed going through them. Sorry I haven't been around much recently. I don't know if anyone feels the same way about this, but it's been work, life, everything seems to have taken over, and I don't have the same want to turn the camera on, and I'm not sure what that is. Maybe just turn it on now will kick me into gear to try do some more reviews for you. But thanks for being here and thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you again soon. You take care of yourself and don't forget to keep smelling wonderful.